What's Your Reel is a podcast where we interview with industry-leading creatives to learn their story about who they are, how they got there, and where they want to go. We invite you to join us on the journey as we roll their reel to learn how these creatives are finding their way to success.
Welcome back to What's Your Reel. We are your hosts, Cameron Bushy and Andy Chamberlain. Today we're sitting down with Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, finally. Hey, we want to know about how you got here because, well, tell us a little bit about your job now.
Sure. So my job now is overseeing pretty much anything and everything that has to do with social media, graphic design, communications, like between public relations or advertising, you might call it, for Essex Alliance Church. And I work with multiple departments within the church and work a lot with our lead and executive pastors and making sure that they have things that they need. But yeah, that is what I do now.
How do you, I've always kind of wondered this, but never asked you. How do you actually do, like, where do you get the materials for the graphics that you make?
My brain.
Okay. Okay. I'm talking more like practically.
Practically, yeah. So I've bounced around over the years of where I like to find stuff from. I mean, my preference is always, if it was an ideal world, to use like actual, like real photos, real footage or whatever of our people and our place. But that's not always the case. We don't always have the...
Yeah, that has not happened yet.
the
library.
Yeah, the imagery. Library of the people available to capture all that because there's a lot going on. So when I don't have that, I go to some stock photo websites like iStock, Shutterstock. I use Adobe's stock photos and yeah.
Andy and I have begun the process of uploading stock photos. I was just
looking into stock photography this week, actually. I have my first couple up.
I've had 11 photos on a few different like stock websites.
Like you're submitting them?
Yeah, I'm submitting them for people to buy them. I've made a small fortune of $1.25 in the last few years. I've had one photo that, like, out of the 11 that people have bought, and they've bought it 5 times. And it's like
a whole quarter.
A quarter a time, man.
That's an upgrade at Starbucks, right? To your drink.
Oh, that is an upgrade. Exactly.
You got sprinkles.
Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I think you got to have a couple hundred photos to start gaining some traction,
or like thousands.
Yeah, right.
And it takes so much time to upload those things. Like the amount of tags and stuff involved. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, because it's all about tags when you're looking for stock photos, just trying out different tags to find what you're looking for.
Yeah,
because
there's no good way of doing it. There's no good way of uploading. It takes hours, and the reward is so little. You know. No, I'm not saying don't do it. But definitely do it.
No, I'll give it a shot. I found a blogger or a YouTuber who shares her story about how she's doing, how she got started and stuff like that. So checking out her profile, it's kind of neat to see. Like she was saying how she uploaded the first 100 photos or whatever, and she didn't make a sale for 30 days, and then she finally sold one, and then the next month she sold like 4 things, and then it was just exponential from there.
Interesting. Sure.
And then
I could see that because I know a lot of times, even when I'm looking at stock photos, if I find one that I like, or I usually look at who the artist is or like a collection. So, I mean, that makes sense to me why she would see that progression.
Yeah. That would make sense.
It's always a little odd when you're using stock photography and then you see that same stock photography like in other
It's
places.
like somewhere else.
Other
Like in
businesses,
use.
you're like, hey,
Yeah.
that's our bulletin cover. Or
I know.
I've caught that with some
Yeah.
audio clips for videos. I'm like, I've used that sound before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that happens.
Kevin McLeod. No, that one's all.
I see it in, oh my gosh, I see it in commercials all the time now where I see music that I just used. And I'm like, oh man. Anyway.
yeah. I mean, you probably just like we notice it probably more than other people
Right,
do.
right.
Like they wouldn't necessarily put those things
Like,
together.
I heard
Like,
this
or,
before. Yeah.
That guy looks familiar.
Right. Anyway, how, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Essex Junction, Vermont,
You've been here forever.
forever.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, we moved here when I was 4 from Detroit. Yeah, Detroit, Michigan.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. Learn something new every day.
Right? Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so I grew up in Vermont, here in Vermont, and then I went to college, and I'm just getting into this, how I got here.
Just do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You ask a question, I'm just going to keep going. So.
That's fine. That's the point of a podcast.
So I went to Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida for college. And there my studying was in psychology with a minor in communication. So my major was psychology and my minor was in communication.
Psychology.
Yeah, psychology.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just I'll like back up a little bit. When I was in high school, like I knew I wanted to go into psychology. Like I knew I wanted to go into some kind of counseling field. I just that was part of my plan. So I'd like planned it all out that, so again, like I'm in high school, I was looking for psychology programs, and it was really important for me to go to a Christian college to get a sort of a biblical worldview base for psychology, and then going to a grad school following that to finish that up, because that's required. I don't know if you know that about psychology majors.
I don't know anything about psychology majors.
You have to go to grad school if you want to do anything with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a little catch.
It is. Yeah. So I knew that, and that was part of my extended career plan, was to do that. Yeah, I graduated early, last semester early, really packed it all in.
Wow.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed the communication piece. I thought in my mind, I just thought like those two things that like went really well together. Like you communicate in anything and everything that you do, right? And then the psychology piece,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communication is probably important when it comes to psychology.
right? You need to be able to talk to people.
You would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important piece of it.
It's an important piece.
Unless you're like doing statistical psychology, which was not my jam. I'm not
That
into
doesn't sound
statistics, no. Though we did have a rat lab on campus that was like, when I heard we had a rat lab at first, I was like, oh, that's cool. I wonder what building that's in. And it was like literally a little, like the tiniest little shack in the middle of a parking lot. Like it just looked like it literally looked like a utility, like maintenance, like someone stored a lawnmower or something in there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I digress, but
interesting.
That was not my favorite place, but yeah, so I graduated and came back home to Vermont. I was getting married at that point, and I had applied to several different like local grad schools, and it was just the like craziest thing. So I took my the standardized tests that you need to take before applying to grad school, similarly like college. I did that. That all went well. And I applied to, like I said, at least there were 3 schools that I remember now. That one that I applied to, again, this is like standardized testing. Granted, I mean, it was a while ago now, but that's all automatic, right? Like you just write down the schools and that you want that your test results go to, and they go automatically. So one school got my application. never got my test results. So my application was incomplete. Another school I applied to was the opposite. They received my test results, but they never received my application. The third school, this is the best one, sent me a letter thanking me for my test results and for my application, but they were shutting down the program to revamp it for the year. So they were just closed down the whole program for a year. They weren't accepting anybody.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I was so confused because it was like a giant door closed
3 times,
slammed in my face. Yeah. Right. And when I came back to, the church had just opened Azimuth Counseling Center. And I started working there. I thought like, oh, it'll be a nice, like little foot in the door in the field I want to be in. So I started, but there wasn't a need for full-time work there. So I was just part-time, and it was a lot of, it was like an office manager type of job. So it was a lot of sitting and waiting for people to come and give them paperwork. Yeah. But yeah, so I was really confused, and people would ask me like, what's the plan with grad school? And I would get like so almost like angry and defensive, like, because I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what the plan is. Like this was my plan, but
you're right.
I tried.
I tried, and it's just, I didn't have an explanation for it. In hindsight, I 100% believe that God closed that door because he had a different plan for me. Mm-hmm. So at that same time, as I was working, just like I said, part-time at Azimuth, and then part-time, a temporary part-time position opened up at the church. And my parents were like, hey, there's a temp position here, because I wanted more hours than just a part-time gig. And so I was like, all right, fine, I'll do a temp job. That's fine. And it's like, I don't know how many years later, 14 years later,
you're still there. So
actually, I think it's more like 15 years.
Your dad's the pastor of the church, which is probably a small detail. But yeah, I love that. So, okay. So I actually didn't know that you had a little bit of like communications in college.
Yeah.
But still you're like, how do you, yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. But not the graphic design piece.
Right.
By any
I
means.
see. Well, what kind of stuff were you learning? Because like, I know people who went to a school of communications or whatever you call it, or media communications.
Sure.
Is that different in any way?
I'm sure it is different.
Okay.
There was not, aside from, I would say, like history of communications, like, how we basically have gotten where we were, and, like the start of the written word, and like how that really changed history. Like that's a lot of what my communication was about. Like I took a lot of like gender communication, courses, stuff like that. Like, so it was really not. And also I'm fairly older than both of you. So, yeah, like just to give you a little perspective on that, when I first entered into my freshman year in college, one of their like selling points, you're going to laugh, was that every dorm room had a computer, but not like a laptop, like a tower, big screen, like big
access
monitor, and like a full on clunky desk to go with it. Like that was a selling point. Like, you don't need to have a computer because we have one for you in your every dorm room that you can share with your roommate.
Wow.
Yeah,
Times have changed.
that did.
Yeah.
That did. They did. I think it was right around that time though. Like I would say after my freshman year that stopped. Like they pulled all the computers and realized that everybody was bringing their own computer or laptop. But so as far as media goes, it just was a little different then. I mean, Facebook, when I was in college, like I'm the generation that Facebook was started for and by.
Oh, wow.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it started as a way to connect college campuses. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, all the Facebook info. So I have like, I don't know, 4 years of Facebook that's just gone. That's like, I don't know. They just deleted it. Like,
Oh, wow.
So it shows, like if you look at, has been on Facebook since whatever day, or year. It was really like 3 or 4 years before that, because it was just like you had to, your college actually had to be like approved by Facebook before you could join it. And so it was like you were kind of just waiting for your college to be approved by Facebook so that you could connect with other colleges across the country. So it all started with that.
Well, that changed.
It changed.
Yeah, it did.
It's amazing we
quickly.
still use Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
sorry.
I was
about to get on a tangent.
I want to ride that tangent a bit. I'm curious about early Facebook. Like, it encouraged you to meet people from all over the world, like a pen pal sort of thing, or
Yeah. Again, it was mostly like, and it wasn't even like globally at that point. It was just like
a college
across,
network.
yeah, college, like United States college networks.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's so strange.
Because now you're
Isn't
not
that
friends
weird?
unless you like met somebody. Generally,
Yeah.
Or what do you mean?
like I don't accept somebody's friend request unless I've physically
Sure.
met
Unless
them.
you've
Oh, on
them.
Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't use Facebook unless I'm selling something. It's just,
You little user.
well, dude, Craigslist makes you pay now.
Oh.
Isn't that absurd?
I haven't used Craigslist in years.
That's
It's
because
so-
we have Facebook.
Yeah.
Well, you and I talk about this a lot because I'm always like, I know nothing about Facebook. Like,
Yeah.
Like, I do not know anything.
Well, and you know what's funny? It's not. I spend a lot of time there, not just because they're, as far as like my job goes and like our viewer base or our reach is primarily on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like more people, well, yeah, I think more people are on Facebook or engage with us on Facebook than other platforms, other social media platforms right now.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. But anyway, I forget where I was going with that.
Well,
with
so
Facebook, but
yeah, well, we were talking about
back at
a little
college.
tangent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking about college. Well, you've been doing this for 14 something years? Seriously?
Well, so here's how I remember how long it's been. So I got married in the summer of 2006, and I started working at the church January of that year. So I've been working at the church as a temp longer than I've been married.
I was just looking up how old I was 14 years ago.
You could do that in your
Say
head.
that should
No.
be pretty simple.
I didn't sleep last night. I was 7, by
Yeah.
the way. I was 7, everybody. 14.
Yeah, I remember.
Really?
Well,
I guess I have been there.
you've been there a
forever.
while.
As have you.
Yeah.
We've all kind of been there
Yeah.
forever.
I was
Yep.
13.
You were 13?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I got into the graphic design piece, if you care to know.
I do care to know. Thank you for keeping us on track.
After I was there as a temp for a little while, it was like a 6-month temp job. So it was a longer, I would say, temp job. But we had just hired a middle school and high school pastor, and Joshua Becker, and he had an assistant that was retiring, and he asked me if I wanted to come work in student ministries, and it was a full-time position. So as much as I liked being at Azimuth for the like sort of big picture career kind of thing. It wasn't like filling, I don't know how am I trying to say this? Like I don't know if it's like a creative need, or I just didn't feel like I was being utilized maybe as fully as I could have been. And it, by nobody's fault, you know, I mean, there wasn't anything else to do, and they only needed this, a certain,
wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah, it wasn't fulfilling in that way. So I ended up taking the full-time position at the church in student ministries. And my first project in graphic design was a calendar. Like Joshua he had come back. He was from the Midwest, and he came back with he spoke at some camps out there, and he came back with a little like trifold calendar that had like 3 months worth of student activities on it. And he handed it to me, and he was like, I want you to make something like this. And
I remember those.
Yeah, right? See, you guys are about the right age to remember them.
Board.
That's right.
I never.
That was the whole idea. You just, like stick it on your bulletin board or whatever. Anyway, so
got the bonfire coming up.
Yeah. So it was he gave me like total, like just free reign with a little bit of guidance with that example, like a hard copy example, to create something. And it took me like forever, it felt like, to do it. And because I didn't really have, and this was all too like, Adobe wasn't really, it wasn't really out there as far as like it wasn't, your average person wasn't using Adobe. It was like for big firms. Like I knew about Adobe, and even then it was like really like Photoshop, and
right.
That
they didn't have the full suite.
They didn't have the whole suite. And anyway, so I made that, and it took forever, but I did a good job with it, and that became like part of my job just there. And then more and more things like that kind of came in where, I was creating graphic art for students, for high school students and middle school students.
It all starts in youth ministry.
It always does, man.
It always does.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like,
where you can do whatever, and it doesn't
you got to
really
work
matter.
out the kinks.
yeah, basically. It's kind of funny how we think about that. It's like, just, next generation, they can deal with it.
Yeah. And then that just evolved. It evolved into, because I was, and I was able to, I will say this too, like part of it maybe because growing up in the church, in this church in particular, but I've always had, I've been able to see like the heart of things, the heart of, and not just church ministry, because I've done some work for other places too, where you just figuring out that the heartbeat of a place, right? And how to sort of represent them in an art form like that, and figure out what their needs are. And so I was able to do that with student ministry. And then I was able to do that for like a bigger church ministry, and leadership there started gave me some hours in doing that in like a bigger, and at that point too, the church was also outsourcing a lot of their graphic needs for things. And then that became eventuly 14, 15 years later, a full-time deal. And it's incorporated a lot of other things, like I said, social media, sort of just, I think a lot of other churches, again, it all just depends on size and funds and staffing, but usually it's split up a little bit more in between, other teams. But
so you were first tasked with this trifold calendar thing.
Yep.
And so graphic design was kind of new at that point you were trying to figure it out. Where did you go to learn, or did you just figure it out on your own?
Oh, I totally just figured it out on my own. It was just, that was most of the time, was like hours, like just playing around and clicking on things and seeing what they did. And then being like, that's not working.
What were you using, like Publisher or something?
Yeah. So I started out in Publisher, which is horrible.
Still is.
Very horrible. But it was accessible. You know, it was
right.
like, at that point, it was part of the Office suite. Especially for businesses.
Just what you did,
it was it was included. It was there. And I think, so it was fine. It was fine for what it was. And then I started using Photoshop and more of the Adobe suite products as they came out. And now I've trashed Publisher. I don't use it at all anymore. I don't even have it. Yeah.
But we don't mess with that.
No. Yeah.
So what do you spend the most time in now as far as software?
I would say probably Photoshop. Yeah. And that's also because too, like, I'm sure there are probably better things. And I have also done, I would also say InDesign, a little bit of Illustrator. Some projects, it just depends on what the need is, what the project is. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a bit of experience in both Illustrator and Photoshop as well. They're powerful programs.
They are. They can be a little intimidating.
Illustrator is intimidating.
Yeah.
Illustrator is a beast I need to learn. But
yeah.
So we typically ask, who is like your biggest, influencer or media person that you look up to? And you can answer that. However, I almost think it's going to be a little different because I know you and I spend a lot of time looking at what other churches are doing because of what we do.
Yeah. I would say I do have a feeling on just generally when it comes to art and creativity in churches.
I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, you'll see. No, I think sometimes as a church, I'm talking, not like big C church, that we let culture kind of decide what we do or push us, what we do creatively. And I feel so strongly that the church should be like leading the way in creativity.
Should be leading the culture, not
exactly.
The culture leading the church.
And pushing those ideas and pushing some of those creative boundaries, like before the culture is, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not many do it.
Yeah.
And I think the ones who are and are trying to, do it so well. I mean, Elevation Church is one that I look to a lot. Their inspiration.
Film team is fabulous. The videos that Elevation puts out is incredible. I mean, they're insane.
Yeah.
So what's an example of a graphic element that you feel you've worked on that's really pushed the limits? Or led by example?
I'll have to think about that for a minute. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I do think, you still have, like, I'll say your day-to-day, week-to-week things that just like need to get done, right? Like you still have, like, our favorite phrase is Sunday still comes, right?
Yes,
it still comes on Sunday. So there's just those things that need to happen like throughout the week that, you need like a sermon series graphic where you're not necessarily pushing anything.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel on a sermon graphic, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
What kind of stuff would you want to push the limits on? Is this Instagram? Is this like what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Or maybe everything. I don't know.
I would say it's everything. Yeah, I wouldn't say it. I do think it's just like creativity and arts just in general. Like I love seeing churches just like push that and like because I think people connect to it. Like I think it's something that whether you have a relationship with Christ or believe in God or not, that people can identify with a good, like if something is aesthetically pleasing, if something looks good, if something sounds good, if it's like a shareable thing. I think a lot about like, is this shareable in like when I'm creating content for like Instagram, I'm usually mostly like Instagram minded when it's like shareable stuff, because if it works on Instagram, it'll work on Facebook. Typically.
Probably.
Yeah. So, a lot of words usually isn't as shareable, and it's finding that balance too of just like, you're still a church. You're like your mission, my heart is advancing God's kingdom and growing that. And so it's finding that balance of, like keeping that big picture, like at the forefront of everything I do. But also looking at other things, just like, okay, what is this like secular business doing, secular company doing that's working for them? And how can we, cause not all of those things just translate really easily into church, like how you would either advertise or use social media. They don't translate easy or seamlessly. So it's thinking about like, how can I use some of those things, some of those ideas and make it work for us, for the church, and would it work? I also think being a church in New England and Vermont is a totally different ball game than say if we were in Ohio or somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's a hugely different ballgame.
Yeah, it is. And, having been in Florida for a bit, and I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time, we have family in the Midwest, so I've spent a fair amount of time in the Midwest at summer camps and churches out there, that it's so different. Like people in the South and the Midwest just have a general, acceptance of church and of God that we don't see here in Vermont in particular and in the Northeast. So it's like really starting from like no base, no spiritual or belief base, and figuring out. And so in that sense, it's, in a sense, I hate comparing it to like good advertising, because when I think of advertising in like a secular sense, it's like after the bottom dollar, right? Like it's after the profit. How can I get people to buy this product and make some money off of it? And that's not our goal. That's not my goal. My goal is like, how can I show people the value that Jesus has in their life, who don't see that there's a value in that. And so it's like spiritual. Yeah.
You're not selling per se, but you are, it is an advertising type of thing.
Something that I think you and I have talked about, something I'm constantly thinking about is like, we walk this line a lot in what we do in ministry, meaning like whatever that be, where it's like we have to make content that is digestible to anyone without tricking anybody, but also being authentic.
Yep.
It is like an impossible balance.
It's very tricky.
It's really tricky.
In fact, I almost think, granted, I've not worked in any kind of secular advertising, but I have worked with some people just like in connecting points that I feel like it's harder doing this for a church, and with that in mind, again, because you like you said, Cam, you're not trying to trick people.
Yeah.
You don't want, like clickbait
Right.
stuff,
Right.
You know,
There's
like that's
some
not
restrictions
what you're
to
after.
it.
Yeah, because
Really.
there's an ethical integrity piece that you just I know I personally hold on to. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want people to, and that's honestly that's probably how the big church has gotten a bad rap in the past too. Like from feeling that, you know, people's experience with church has been inauthentic or hypocritical
Yeah.
and really harmful to some people. And it's like, I don't want that to be anybody's experience
Yeah.
with our church.
Well,
That's a good point.
this is what makes me so passionate about telling people stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's like, okay, well, obviously we know biblically that we're called to be witnesses. Okay. But also like the best kind of marketing, in my opinion, this is my opinion. Okay.
Yep.
The best kind of marketing in a church is the people's stories.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And what's incredible is I've taken that to every other secular job that I do, and it works there too.
Yeah.
Telling people stories.
Yeah, it's
is.
like
Yeah.
even like, for instance, did a bunch of videos for not a farming company, not a bird seed company. I'm trying to think of how to categorize them. They basically
Come
they're
on.
like a hardware. They're like a hardware store, but like they sell like dog, like a bunch of animal food.
I know which story you're talking
I know.
about based on your description.
How would you describe that?
It's a farm and garden store.
Yeah.
Nice farm and yard.
Yeah, that one. So, but what we did is like, because we looked at it and we're like, we can't sell bird seed.
Oh,
Nobody
yeah.
cares.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
like,
have to sell the story.
Unless you sell the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you sell the story of the people, dude. It literally works. That kind of sounds terrible when you're talking about ministry, but
Yeah.
No, it is.
it's
You
kind of
know,
what's happening, you know?
I think about and relate a lot to Humans of New York.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you're familiar with him, I mean, he's huge now. I mean, Humans of New York is like its own
Yeah.
organization.
Everybody's
now.
heard of it.
Yeah. But that wasn't always the case. And I noticed what he was doing early on in his Humans of New York journey when it was just looking at like, hey, I live in this giant city there with millions of people, and like, what are their stories? And I believe that's why Humans of New York has existed and has grown, because it's all about people's stories.
That personal connection.
Yeah, that personal connection. People, I think people just innately have a desire to connect with people and feel like there's a shared experience. There's a shared, that you're not alone in something that you've faced, and that there's such a huge value in that. So I think about that a lot with church and stories. Yeah.
You've wanted to do something like that forever in Burlington.
A Humans in
I
New York
have.
thing.
Yeah. It still hasn't happened.
It
Which is
hasn't.
partly my fault.
No, I wouldn't say that
I have-
because even before you were on staff, I've wanted to do something like that, but I just haven't had the capacity. I'm not a photographer or a videographer,
Right. You don't necessarily want to just like Humans of Burlington and copy the thing.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
You got to make it your own.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to be a copy and paste thing, but yeah, there are some things that I am just not very good at, and that's one of them, photography. And yeah,
Yeah.
and that's an important piece in capturing people's stories, because you need
Imagery.
imagery. Yeah.
I would agree. Obviously. You've only really ever done stuff for Essex, right? As far as, you've done stuff for me, but
Yeah. I have, yes and no. I've done stuff for my husband and his job, his
Right.
business.
yes.
Yes. I've done a bit for him. And I have done some, Do you remember the fish and loaves?
Yes.
Vaguely. So
downstairs.
Downstairs.
I know the rooms.
Yes.
Does it have anything to do with that?
It does have It does have something to do with that.
Oh,
so
okay.
it was.
I've never known what those were there for.
So there was. Yeah. It just. I think the direction of things changed, but anyway,
it's like a church initiative that didn't.
Well, it was actually its
traction.
own nonprofit.
Oh,
That was separate from the church, and they had a whole different MO kind of thing. Anyway, again, because it was separate from the church,
feed the community sort of thing.
It
right?
was, yep, and it was bigger than that. It was like it was a lot about food and like urban, like food deserts and providing stuff like that. But also education. There was like an education piece. Anyway, I did a lot of stuff for them too when they were, yeah.
I've always wondered what those rooms, why they were called that.
Fish and loaves.
And what they were doing.
Yeah,
I was like, the fish and loaves rooms downstairs. I'm like,
yep.
Is that still a thing, or is that Project Sunset?
Well, it was, my understanding is I think it was sort of tabled indefinitely. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily like just done or, but yeah. So I've done stuff for them, but I don't have a whole lot of time for a lot else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll get like a little, like just a tiny little side request from somebody who.
Yeah.
There's usually some connection, like someone I know or someone really knows.
So what do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to do this forever?
I wouldn't
choose your next words carefully.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, listen. So though I love what I do, it's certainly, I'm not sure if I mentioned this when I was talking earlier. I don't think I did. But when those doors were closed and I started as far as grad school, psychology, career goes, and I started down this path, I could see that it was exactly where God wanted me, even if it wasn't what I thought I would be doing. And since then, I definitely feel like 100% God has placed a call for ministry on me. And what that looks like, I think, is ever evolving. I mean, even just, I've been doing a lot more. I've been doing a lot more in like, as far as like big picture. I've always been a big picture person, like seeing the big picture behind things, even back when like we used to do Christmas Spectacular. I could see like the whole thing, like the whole show. And yet I could also think through like every little detail that needed to happen to make that big picture happen. But so I've been working with more people, like on sort of a one-on-one or like a individual ministry basis on like big picture stuff and like that advancing kingdom. I mean, ultimately, my passion is people over design.
Yeah.
And so how that looks and how God is going to use that, I'll leave up to him.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, you have a passion for reaching people.
Exactly. And I do think, I mean, that's evolved over like the last decade plus. And I see that continuing to evolve and what that looks like.
Isn't it kind of crazy that you felt you're passionate about reaching people, basically, and you were thrown into this job that eventually became the social media monster that we're in now?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
You ever thought about it like that?
No, I I think about that a lot.
Really?
Yeah. And I think about too, just how God knows so much more than we do when we're making our plans, and how we can trust him with that. Because, early on, I had a heart for psychology, and I thought the communication piece was an important part for that. And just how he's taken both of those things. I mean, the joke is that like psychology majors never end up in psychology because it's like, if somebody's just doing, I don't know, probably something like what I'm doing. Oh, you must be a
Wouldn't
psych major. Because
that's funny. I know like the thing about like English majors.
Yeah, it's similar.
The unemployment major.
Yep, it's very similar. Everybody majors in psychology, and then like a very small percentage does anything. I did not believe I would be part of that. But I will say that I have definitely seen where God used that as part of his plan, like that was not just used as part of it, it was an integral part of his plan, like having that base. In how people, right? Because psychology is about people, and how people, reasons why they behave they do or think the way they do, and differences between genders and generations and all that stuff. So, and trauma too, and how that applies to what I'm doing now. I could see it very clearly even when I started working with students, like that a lot of that psychology and communication was coming in with them and working with them. And it's totally like coming in now too.
Yeah. Graphics is communication. So trying to reach people, getting to people, especially in a church setting or even secular advertising, like you were talking about, you're still trying to reach people. So I think the psychology and totally works.
Yeah.
You just didn't see that coming in college.
No, I did not. It was not part of my plan. Yeah. But it was part of God's plan. And it's been even better than I could have imagined, because I actually do think about that like if I was in a sort of traditional like therapeutic psychology counseling kind of role, I wouldn't, there is a creative side to me that is being fulfilled in what I'm doing now, and in like how I work with people now and how I minister to people now. And it's such a perfect fit. It was like, God just knew me better than I knew me.
Yeah. Can I shift gears a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
I just remembered a vital detail about you.
Okay.
You're on the worship team. I kind of forgot that this is about all of those things. Yeah. I'm like, graphic design. Let's talk about that. Yeah. I like totally, well, I don't know. Wow. Okay. Anyway, that just came to me. I was like, oh yeah.
There's a lot of facets.
Yeah. You're also a singer. Okay. So
I do sing.
Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Okay. Well,
totally shifting gears here.
It's really shifting gears.
I have a whole nother podcast now.
So I was on a student-led worship team. What was it called? It
always start in youth ministry.
It always starts in youth ministry. That's why youth ministry, student ministry is so important.
It is so important.
It's a training ground.
Yeah.
Hey, that's
for students.
That's how.
It's where passions.
That is why I'm on staff.
Are lit. Yeah.
It's because I started in youth ministry.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was on a worship team. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. This was back when everything was an acronym,
Yeah.
So it was like, it was BLAST. It was called BLAST, and it stood for Big, Loud, Awesome Service for Teens.
Of course.
That is the most youth ministry band name ever.
Like
I love
90s or early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, So that was like
Blast.
a Sunday morning, Blast, which was like a middle school, high school. You just like shudder at that a little bit.
Shiver.
Like, I know it's a little cringeworthy, but that was the time.
Yeah, fits the time.
So I anyway, I sung with a student band that was a student church service on Sunday mornings way back then. And, yeah, so I sort of just continued with it, like when I was home.
So wait, did you just, I mean, did
I've
you
kind
like
of-
sing growing up, or was this like, oh, give me a microphone, I can do this? Like, what's the deal?
I mean, a little, you know, I would call myself like a B singer, you know, just,
Hey, real question.
yeah.
Are the two E's and B silent?
In B?
Yeah, like the bzz.
Oh.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. Think about that.
Oh.
Anyway,
No,
continue.
they're not. They're not
I
silent.
don't want to waste brain cells on that. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not like, my sister is an incredibly naturally gifted singer.
Oh, really?
Like she was always naturally theatrical and just had a more of a stage presence, I would say. So I sang, like, I mean, and I, you know, again, growing up in church, like, also, that was also very, like, you know, 90s church was a lot of, like, I mean, we would sing, like, I would sing with my dad, like, on Sunday morning. Like, that was part of, like, church service.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, singing us, he's got the whole world in his hands or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been singing since I can remember, but not in any kind. It was never like a huge part of my life. Like especially when I got into high school, you know, I sang, like I said, I sang a little bit in that student-led band through church, but, you know, I didn't sing like in anything through schools. I didn't really sing in college at all. Like I said, when I'd come home, I would jump in a little bit on worship team that was here, and choir when we had a choir. But even that, like, that's evolved over the years for me and how that looks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with worship leading anyway, I don't know if I want to leave this in or take it out.
Okay.
But it's like you're, I gotta choose my words wisely here. You can lead people
Yes.
from a stage.
Yes. Like you're saying that I am capable of doing that. Like I do that.
Like you do it very well.
Okay. Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I do. I like to think I have a pretty, I mean, we all have a bias when we think about ourselves, right? But I do like to think that I have a fairly realistic view of what my strengths and weaknesses are, which is why I said I consider myself a B singer, because I know I'm not like some people just have a natural cadence, a natural ability vocally that I don't have. I mean, I have worked to make that better. But it's just, some of it is what it is. And I know what I have. But I also, in that same sense, I know what I have. And I do know, like, leadership is definitely one of my giftings. And I can lead people.
Yeah. No, the church
Yeah.
wakes up when you're there.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's how I always describe it to people. It's like the church wakes up that morning, you know, because you know how to lead people. And that's interesting because of just everything that we've talked about and how,
you know, and Ron talks about this a lot, you know, in leading us as a worship team, that, like, you can, the leading people, is such a harder thing, I think, to get when you're talking about worship, than it is. I mean, you can work with I'll say almost anybody who has some kind of quality of instrumentality, musicality. if they can fit into a team well and lead well. And I mean, and my own personal, thoughts and opinions on that too is like, again, worship should look different than other forms of music, right? Like, anybody who can sing well, you can come on a Sunday morning and hear it and think, oh, that was nice. Like, that sounded great. It was, the band sounded good. Vocals sounded good. The mix sounded good. But worship should be a different, like a next level of engagement, of connecting, that is it's a little bit harder, I would say, maybe to hone some of that, in developing people in a worship sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole nother aspect other than singing, just like there's a whole nother aspect other than advertising that we're talking about.
The goal is to get to the feels and really reach people deeply and emotionally.
Feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to those feels, bro.
Yeah.
I honestly, I hate the word feels. So I don't know.
You wouldn't know.
It gives me the willies.
That was a real shudder.
Yeah, I hate that word, but reach people deeply more than just like going to a concert. Like, it feels good.
Yeah.
But like, no, you want to like really move people on a Sunday morning and bring them in. Make them vulnerable.
I'm not sure if you knew this about me, but I do have some life experience that has shaped a little bit how I lead. That might be surprising.
Is it youth ministry?
Nope.
Okay.
I was a competitive cheerleader.
Oh.
For
I think I did know
competitive.
Competitive.
Okay. Not just a cheerleader, a competitive cheerleader.
Yeah, it's important to, to specify, to distinguish between, because there have you seen like Cheer on Netflix? No?
Okay. You're not the first person to tell me to watch it.
It's a great listen.
But no, I
Willie watched it with me and he was totally hooked on it.
I love
it. Is this a cheerleading show?
It's a documentary.
Okay.
A docuseries.
We should get Willie on the podcast. We should. Let's do it.
Well, it might not be this podcast unless you want, because he is like, for someone who is basically my age, you would think that he is like 90 years old when it comes to technology.
Tell me about your smartphone camera.
He was like, what camera? Like, he just doesn't know.
I love it.
It's
anyway,
fine. It's him. It's great.
Competitive cheerleading. Yeah. So I was a competitive cheerleader through high school and college. And I still judge cheerleading competitions for the state of Vermont. Oh, that's neat.
Yes. Little side detail.
You help. Well, actually, never mind. Essex. I don't think Essex has won since my year. But
no, they haven't won in a long time.
We were like, weren't we like? No, I'm thinking of gymnastics. Gymnastics, we won like 17 years straight or something like that.
No, that was the case for cheerleading.
Oh, really?
But it was, like when I was in high school, we won like, it was like 11 years or something.
Oh, wow.
10, 11 years.
Anyway. Essex is better, people.
Yeah, I don't know. There were some things there that I do, I talk about a lot when it comes to worship ministry, because here's an example. Okay.
Yep.
Like when we were practicing for a cheerleading competition, and this really goes for any sort of, I'll say, visual arts. Yeah. You can practice choreography, right? And I get this. Do you know what I mean by that? Mm-hmm. Like you can go through the motions on something, and be able to do it, execute it well. But you also have to like believe what you're doing and believe in what you're doing and have other people feel that energy, right? So like one of the things we would do is like we would practice smiling, and our facials was like the word too, because it wasn't just smiling, it was like a lot of crazy facial expressions. But yeah, you would like, that was part of practicing. Like it wasn't just hitting a stunt or a tumbling pass or, you know, motions. It was like showing, because you have to do it. No one wants to watch like stone face cheerleading competitions. It's not as fun.
Right.
All right. It's not as engaging.
Sure.
Like the whole, like part of it is being
part of the energy.
engaging. Yeah. The energy, and practicing that. And in worship team, like you have, that's an important piece. I mean, even again, I'll go back to like Christmas Spectacular and dance team. When I would when I was leading the dance team for Christmas Spectacular, I would like have them practice smiling. That was like, because if you don't practice it, when you're in front of people, there's still something different about being in front of people, whether you're leading people or if it's more of a performance in front of people, that changes the dynamic, changes your own energy. Like there's a little bit more like anxious energy there where you tend to lose some things, like, and it's usually smiling. It's usually shows in your face, where if that becomes second nature or like mindless, like you don't have to think about smiling anymore, you just do it. Then you don't have to, that's not something you have to think about doing. Like when you're trying to make sure you know where you are leading a song and what verse I'm in, or is it the bridge next or the chorus next?
Yeah, right.
Like you're already thinking about those things because you're leading people in those things. You don't want to have to think about smiling and engaging in that way.
No, and that's so huge. I mean, we because of the virus and stuff, we haven't had church services. So we went and did some recordings. And the last set of recordings that we did was after a giant power outage, and one thing led to another. Basically, half the stuff, just everything was just going wrong that night. And like the recordings are terrible. Because everyone is pissed on stage and just like so sick of all the stuff that was happening elsewhere. And I only say that because it's like, you know, I don't want somebody listening to be like, oh, well, they're all just like fake smiling up there.
No, it's not fake.
But it's like, one, it's not fake, it's authentic. But when you're like, this freaking lyrics are wrong again, you got to wait for them to change, because that's what happened. I had to go and redo all the lyrics.
Oh, no.
I don't even know how that, so like, where's it going with this? But yeah, it's like, it still has to happen because of leading people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. So. No, and I do think like, yeah, it absolutely has to be authentic, right? And I will say like, that is one thing too, in where it's a key difference that I've seen in, I get, you know, from like, I'll say like cheerleading, competitive cheerleading, to like either worship dance, like a dance team, or worship, you know, vocally leading, is it has to be authentic. You know, I mean, you can fake smile and like, I don't know, do crazy things with your face during a cheerleading competition. But if it's not authentic when you're doing it in worship or in again, performing like dance in a worship service, then it's, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
That's got to be kind of hard at times, because like, you know, somebody may love cheerleading or love dancing, so they legitimately feel joy from that. But like Cam was saying, some nights just, you don't have your game on. So trying to put on that stage presence of smiling while being authentic, I would think would be challenging at times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there have definitely been times, like personally, when I've been leading worship on a Sunday morning where, you know, it's been a real, just like rough personal place that I've been in. You know, other things are going on where and this is where I do feel like worship is different. It's not so much about the smiling, though, like that is a piece of it. Again, like just it becoming
that's a practical
part
piece.
Of it's a practical piece. The authenticity piece is the biggest part. And so like on those, I know some of those Sundays that I've come in not feeling I'll say like joyful, not like feeling down, feeling frustrated, feeling tired, or, you know, emotionally, mentally exhausted. Worshiping from that raw, authentic place, I think has just as much impact as worshiping with a smile and with joy. I mean, and there've been lots of times where I've been leading and I feel like my voice catch from just whatever's going on in my personal life, that it just comes through, and it's just amazing how it doesn't matter what's going on. Like if you're coming to it from a place of authenticity and a place of just allowing God to worship through you, lead through you. Cause I start all my Sunday mornings, before going out on the platform, with that prayer on my heart, that it would be him there, that him using me as his vessel, and however that looks and whatever that may be, and not me, putting myself aside and putting him above.
Mm-hmm. Oh, can I switch gears again?
Yeah.
Okay. Back to media. I just remember you've taught some classes, maybe only one. I was there for one of them. I don't know how many. But
I've taught a few.
Okay. So you've taught some classes on what you do on social media, on graphics and specifically for churches, I assume those were.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Specifically for churches. Yep.
So give us some information. I mean, give some churches some advice here.
Okay. So, like I've gone a couple different directions with some of these. One is more of just like a personal, like how I feel, my personal sort of beliefs as a believer, someone who claims to know Christ and love Christ, how we should be using social media.
Like as individuals.
Gotcha. And then there's some stuff as like a church. But so as far as individuals go, I always think, and this really translates to anything. I think you can apply it to any aspect of your life, but is it coming from a place of love? You know, like where is it coming from? Like, are you like, is the thing you're posting, is the thing you're sharing? I mean, I love a good meme. So that's, it doesn't always have to have like a deep meaning, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
Memes are just mindless and funny. And
the two E's and B was a meme.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that myself.
Okay. Maybe we needed the visual to go with it to grasp it.
I didn't get the visual. Somebody just like someone just like read it to me. I was like, that's great.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, are you escalating? I think of it a lot as like, are you speaking love into people's lives? Are you fostering community? Are you fostering relationships? You know, and if the answer is no, then I would think twice about what it is you're putting out there. And that's not, I don't mean that in an inauthentic way, because I do think sometimes it can come across as like, if you just hear it like that, like, I don't know, you think of like Instagram, like that everything's perfectly staged and so that you get the shot and the caption that you want. I mean, like, keep it authentic, keep it real, but just like what's thinking about it more. Like that was like my big thing in working with students, that I don't think we think about things enough. Like, I don't think we think about the impacts of our words, of our actions, and especially when it comes to social media. And so just thinking about like what
are you
impact,
blindlessly posting?
Exactly. Yeah. And because here's the thing too with social media, so my little finger wag
Pay attention.
Pay attention. I think it's easy to lose sight of your sphere of influence when you're on social media. And because, you see, like, you just never know who is going to see what you see, and like how far of a reach and how big that sphere goes, or what spheres they cross with.
It's bigger than your close friends or your target audience.
Than who shows up in your news feed because of Facebook algorithms. Like,
right.
And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that there are algorithms that show you certain people and that will show you to certain people, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you think.
That does make you think. You always think about the algorithms sending you things.
Right.
But yeah,
But
those algorithms
who are you
are
really in front of?
Yeah, those algorithms are sending you places.
Yep.
It's funny we're talking about this. Me and my buddies were Googling each other the other night.
How'd that go?
Dude, it's like it literally, if you look it up, please don't. It'll tell you how much.
We have to now.
It'll tell you how much money my company has made.
Oh, that's
Really?
creepy.
Yeah, and it's like an estimate.
information.
It's an Yeah, I was like, huh? I'm like on this website, and it has me, the owner, how many employees I have, which is me, and like how much money I'm estimated to make a year. Like, it is crazy. Anyway, side note. So that's your piece for individuals.
Yeah. Just think.
Just think. I agree.
Think a little bit more.
I wish people would think about a lot of things a little bit more.
I was talking with my wife about that recently. Like, I think the majority of people don't think. And I'll stop there, but like, I don't think there's a lot of people that are deep thinkers. Like, they don't take a step back and think about the world or what their actions have on the world. And people need to just stop and think more. So they need to be better listeners.
Goes to that big picture.
Okay.
Big picture. Yeah.
Psychology major.
Okay.
I learned this like recently that some people can't have internal dialogues with themselves. True or false?
Well,
I think it's true.
Sure. Okay.
What?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Some people can't.
I mean,
apparently some people legitimately cannot like talk to themselves. Like the first time they think, like basically the first time they think of something is when it's coming out.
That seems dangerous.
I know.
I mean, let me put it this way. I wouldn't be able to say true or false in that sense, but I don't think humans are beyond anything, like when it comes to abilities or inabilities.
Yeah. I don't remember what source I heard that from or if it was reliable
It's an
or not.
interesting thought thing. Like, even if it's not true, I think, I'm sure there's a scale that some people are more internal thinkers or
well, I analyze everything, for instance.
and some people definitely
analytical.
Some people definitely analyze less.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to think
Okay.
about.
I would also just like to throw this into when you say, I don't know, one of you said something about like, where did it come from? I'm not sure where it came from. Please look at where things are coming from when this goes back to personal stuff on social media. Like, before you just like share something that looks factual.
Oh yeah. Yes.
It is like a huge, I honestly think like partially why we're in where we are is
you can stop there. Right?
Yeah.
We know where we are.
Country as a global community, is because there's so much out there that is opinion that gets shared as fact.
Looks like fact.
Just so
it gets
fake.
confused. And the thing, I mean, here's the thing too, like everything, even something, this might get a little too, I don't know.
Whatever.
Anything is kind of relative, right? Even like statistics, which are pretty hard and fast and can be interpreted different ways, or can be published in different ways, like can show something or not show something. So everything is, I'll say, a little relative, even the hard stuff, even the hard, cold facts, because whoever's reporting it still has their own bias and slant on their own personal worldview that is going to come out. So I just think, even just thinking about that, like recognizing that we all have a bias. We all have a worldview that is different, and who's sharing these facts, even if they are facts, like I was saying, like who is it coming from, and what's their worldview, and how does that fit with your worldview and your own biases and all that stuff. Anyway.
Or even just paying attention to who posted that graphic. It may be a graphic of a statistic.
Right.
But if it's shared by funny memes page.u or something stupid, you know, like, I don't know, you know, because it's like total garbage like that. You know, and just like, where's the source of that information coming from? And, you know, people.
Yeah, there's a lot of deception out there. That's for sure.
And so who do you trust?
It's hard to decipher, I think. Yeah.
Well, with the, I would say, social media climate that we're in, but like less speaking about political crap, but more speaking towards like the virus. How does this change what you do moving forward?
Well, it's certainly secured some things in what I do. Like as far as it's, you know, it's not going away. Like the digital communication, digital services, you know, digital ministry, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think there's always going to be a need, and of course, like there's more, I wouldn't say more value, but a different value, a strong value in in-person stuff. But there are people who just need to be able to connect remotely, digitally. That is not going away. So that I think that's changed. Not necessarily from like me personally, what I do. I certainly had a lot more work like initially.
Yeah.
I was working a lot.
Just don't have to make that weekly bulletin.
No, that's gone.
The flyer is gone.
I've been trying to get rid of it. So funny thing.
That's going to be gone for a while.
When I started as a temp,
oh boy.
What the bulletin was like something I was like, oh yeah, I'll help with that. And 15 years later, the thing is like a boomerang. You just try to give it away to somebody else, and it always comes back. Like if you're there, the bulletin always comes back to you.
Yeah, it's kind of going to different people.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Don't ever take on the bulletin.
That lovely bulletin. All right. One quick piece on churches. We'll jump back to.
Okay.
You know, because you had advice for churches, possibly for social media.
Yeah.
I mean, you taught courses on it.
Yeah, no. I mean, and that really, you know, a lot of my thoughts on that has to do more with, I'll say missional living, and really embracing that as a church. So I think if you can embrace missional living, and, you know, just what I mean by that is like that your focus as a church. I think because churches are still, you know, we're in this world, we're in this time in history and culture that the church is functionally operates like a business, right? But we're more than a business, but there are just logistical things that a church does that are like any other business around, right? And sometimes I think that can bog churches down in losing the vision and the purpose to why they exist and why they should exist. Like it's not about like what songs or how loud the music is or, you know, what color the auditorium is or whether you call it an auditorium or sanctuary. Like getting hung up on these things,
pews or chairs,
these little things that really detract from the purpose of the church. And the purpose of the church is advancing God's kingdom, right? And reaching people so that they can have a relationship with Jesus, right? That's our goal. And like, so how do you do that? I think that the church has lost that. You know, we're living in a post-Christianity world where that sort of foundational belief of like everybody accepting God, like a God, is not there. We're not operating out of that. So we're a lot like the early church in that regard, like starting from no belief or from disbelief, and even like starting from a place of rejected belief, right? Because of harm that the church has caused. And so I think for some people, some churches, like breaking out of your Christian bubble and like really building relationships to reach people for Christ and in an authentic way. Like this is not about like handing out a tract on Halloween with your candy or leaving it like what looks like a fake, $50 bill that's really a track on, as a tip at a restaurant. Like it's little things like going to a local, like, I think some of the relationships I've built have been, like I've gone to yoga classes and building relationships with people that, it starts in a class like that. And then, we might get coffee after the class and we might get lunch after the class. And then, it's spending time with people and building relationships with people so that you can invite them in to your life, which in your life should represent that connection with Jesus and the impact that Jesus has had in your life. So all that to say, my biggest thing for churches when it comes to social media, when it comes to communicating, is thinking about missional living. Because I think if you've got missional living, then that piece should come. You can't go wrong with that piece. And it has to do with because here's the thing too, like what works for me and for us at Essex Alliance Church isn't necessarily going to work for the church, even in the neighboring town or the church, in, a different part of the country. Like you have to be able to know the community you're in, and the church should make the community a better place. And so how are you being able to show that through social media, through graphic design, through your communication, that like our church is like wants to make our community a better place, and because that's what people connect with.
Do you find yourself trying to strive for a really high quality product? One thing I got from Josh Becker when I did some video projects with him back then is he always tried to push us to not be church basement style and not just be kind of, lame, throw it together. We do it because we're the youth ministry. He always tried to push us to be high quality and take it a step up. Do you find yourself pushing quality limits in order to really reach the elements of your job at church?
Yes. I'll say yes with a caveat. I do think, what I'm seeing, what I've been noticing with coronavirus in particular is that I think that's shifting a bit for everybody, secular church world, that there's a shift happening where I think quality is still super important. I mean, you don't want to like half-ass stuff, right? And you want it to be like full, your full effort, your full heart, like of whatever it is you're doing. So that piece. But I think for a while we got into a place of like being almost too focused on quality that you lose some authenticity. And so I think keeping that authentic quality.
You brought up a good point with the coronavirus, how that's maybe changing, is that I think the generally acceptable like level of quality has come down because everybody's moved on Zoom or streaming of some sort. And we've chosen a very high level of a video stream of going full HD cameras and everything and broadcast on YouTube, very high quality. But a lot of people are just like talking to the iPhone sort of deal. And people are accepting of that because that's kind of the barrier of what's out there right now. So that's an interesting point too, that now that it's challenged the communication, I think the way of reaching people has almost taken a notch back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you think too, like people have been kind of forced to like shoot stuff from home in isolation in every industry. You know, like it doesn't matter what you're watching.
There's comedians that they're
a late night show.
Doing it online in their room.
So your quality, I mean, they still, I know for if you have the money, if places have the money, they'll send their people like quality production equipment, like the cameras and the microphones. So it's not just like your cell phone, but it's different, right? It's not highly produced and polished. And I think people have started connecting with that in a way that like you still want the quality there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But comes a point where that shouldn't be the threshold, that it's getting the information out there is the important part.
Yeah. And I think like in anything we do, we should do it with excellence, you know? I mean, especially as believers, like we should, you know, if what we do is to glorify God and honor him, then everything we do should be done with excellence and with our utmost, right? That shouldn't go away. We shouldn't just accept like a lower quality or less effort.
Do you have any strategies or techniques or ways to navigate how to reach the different generations, especially on social media?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think a lot about demographics and who we're reaching and, you know, how that works. And so when I like meet with ministry leaders, or when I'm looking at putting things out there, one of my first questions is like, what's your target audience? Like, who are you? And sometimes that's demographics, right? Or, you know, generational differences. Because that depends, I think, on what just like style of things and how you put things out, and where you put things out. Like, you know, I wouldn't target high school students on Facebook. I would target them on Instagram, but I would target high school parents on Facebook. I mean, and even around here too, we actually have a bigger population of, like an older generation that isn't on any social media at all. And how do you keep them involved and engaged? And, you know, I think just it's important to look at the generation you're building into, like who's going to take over for the foundation, and the foundation that this, like the current generation or the previous generation has laid. So there's definitely a focus on that, but you also don't want to lose people along the way. So just, I don't know, that's not really a direct answer, but I do think about it a lot.
Do you find yourself more targeting like, okay, this media outreach is really pushed towards boomers versus this one here I'm really going to target towards millennials? Or do you just try to shoot like something that's going to kind of reach everybody at a certain level? Yeah.
I mean, again, if I think about like big church stuff, it's a bigger, broader reach. And I wouldn't say as a narrowed in, goal kind of a thing. And and in that sense is trying to think of like, you know, thinking of the broadest base of who that's gonna connect with. And hopefully, you know, too, again, thinking of missional living, that's
right. That kind of overlaps everything.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about like, if I'm not a church person, how does this look to me? What is this saying to me? If I know nothing about church at all, like,
it's a good lens to have on.
what's it gonna say? Is it gonna offend me? Is it gonna draw me in? Yeah.
Where can people find you, and where can people find the work that you do?
Well, I don't have like a website of just me and my work.
That's okay.
So if you want to see things that I do, you can visit our Essex Alliance Church Facebook page or Instagram account, and see some of the stuff. I mean, most of the stuff that's on there is stuff that I've at least had my hand in, if not totally done. Also, any sermon series graphics that you might see on our YouTube channel, and messages, I do those. EssexAllianceChurch.org. Maybe. Not.
Don't go there.
Don't go there yet.
Stay tuned.
Don't go there.
No, but you can get other places from there.
Not really.
Sometimes.
Not very well. Don't go there, guys. Do you have anything else to add?
You can reach me, Sarah, SARAH, at EssexAlliance.org if you have any thoughts, questions. Yeah.
Sweet.
Or,
Awesome.
yeah.
Dude, thanks
I'm
for
on
doing this.
Instagram and Facebook too, so you can always find me on there.
Sweet.
Well, thanks for
Appreciate it.
coming on the show.
Yeah.